Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Thursday, November the 7th, 2024. So, Donald Trump has won the presidential election. And yes, I did predict that he was going to win. And so my prediction turned out to be correct. Obviously, I'm relieved. I mean, if I'd got this wrong, it would have been bad. Really bad. I put a huge amount of effort into looking at Trump's chart and particularly looking at Kamala Harris's chart. You know, I was using my knowledge of astrology, and as far as I was concerned, it was absolutely obvious that Trump was going to win, particularly once Kamala Harris had taken over from Joe Biden. I mean, I didn't really spend too much time looking at Joe Biden's chart, but Kamala Harris, her chart, particularly what's going on this year, was, to be honest, a train wreck. And if Kamala Harris had won, I mean, to be honest, I should have just closed this channel down because all my careful analysis would have just been for nothing. It would have just shown to my, as far as I'm concerned, that I don't know about incompetent, but everything I was doing, everything I believed in was simply incorrect. Or I suppose you could argue that I was completely biased in favour of Trump and I couldn't see the wood for the trees. I suppose that's a possibility. But I'm certainly very relieved in one sense, because I'm relieved I got my forecast right. Now, as far as what's going on in America and what it means for America, I'm not a voter. Because I'm not a citizen. I'm a lawful permanent resident, as they say. And if I did have a vote, I think I would have probably voted for Jill Stein. But from an environmental perspective, I regard Trump as being a disaster. I mean, I think he has been a disaster. I don't think he cares less about the environment. You know, I've seen him say, drill baby drill, and the environment doesn't seem to mean anything to him. Oh, I know that RFK is on board, and RFK was an environmental lawyer, but I don't think that's going to count for much. On the other hand, from a perspective of world peace, I think it's great that Trump is president, is now going to become president. I think the chances of, for example, a nuclear war happening in the next few years are much reduced now that we've got Trump as president. I think lives are going to be saved in Gaza and hopefully Ukraine as a result of him becoming president. In my opinion, I know, this has been questioned in the comments, but as far as I'm concerned, that's what's going to happen. As far as the American economy is concerned, I suspect it's going to be good for the American economy. Trump winning, I don't know. But as far as I'm concerned, environment and foreign policy are the two things that matter most to me. And I do think that environmentally, it's very sad that Trump has won. But as they say, it is what it is, isn't it? As far as my prediction, I just looked at the comments on my site. A lot of people congratulated me, but I was not the only astrologer to predict that Trump was going to win. There's this website, skyscript.co.uk, which has a list. Someone has done an amazing job listing all of the astrologers who predicted that Trump was going to win and who predicted that Kamala was going to win, and there are loads and loads of astrologers predicted Trump was going to win. And so I'm far from being unique, but kind of disturbingly, more astrologers predicted that Kamala was going to win than Trump was going to win. I find that absolutely... Sorry, let me say it again. More astrologers predicted that Kamala was going to win than Trump was going to win. So I find that absolutely bizarre. I mean, how could you possibly have come to the conclusion that Kamala was going to win. As far as I can see, her chart was terrible. I mean, her chart, I think, is in many respects was terrible in general, although, of course, she has become very successful. She got to be vice president. But in terms of what's happening at the moment, really things were not good. And I do find it surprising that anyone could have predicted that she was going to win. And in fact, more astrologers who published their predictions thought Kamala was going to win compared to those who thought Trump was going to win. Yeah, that is disturbing. Is it an issue with technique? Or is it just an issue of sheer bias? It seems that most astrologers in the West seem to be progressive. They seem to support the Democrats, and it just may be that there's been a critical bias which has impacted what they're going to say. That's certainly possible. And there's absolutely no reason, by the way. And I'm not saying that I am a conservative. I'm not a conservative. But there's absolutely no reason why an astrologer should be progressive. There's nothing really progressive about astrology. Not at all. Astrologers have a long tradition. Centuries, millennia. We are part of a tradition. And so part of astrology is maintaining a tradition. So in a way, there is nothing disruptive or progressive or innately left-wing or innately Democrat about being an astrologer. In fact, you could argue, and maybe I should put up a video at some stage, that astrology is a naturally conservative profession. Anyway, I have been talking a bit too much. My main topic in this, I've been talking rather too much in this introduction, but my main topic is going to be Trump's victory. And some of the things I want to, some of the things that stand out, and I should say I do want to make a separate video where I sort of really go into detail about Trump's horoscope and in particular Kamala Harris's horoscope, and really look at in particular why I think certain astrologers might have made a mistake of thinking that Kamala Harris was going to win. But that is about a separate video. This video, at the end of this video, I'm going to just be looking at some of the things that really stand out to me about Trump's victory, with particular reference to the Jupiter-Saturn cycle. Anyway, before I do that, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Thursday, November the 7th, 2024. The usual reminder, if you enjoy this video, I would be very grateful if you were to like it. If you are not subscribed, I would be super grateful if you were to subscribe. Of course, only subscribe if you enjoy the video. And yeah, if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. Anyway, let's look at what's happening today. And so here we have the chart for today, which is Thursday, November the 7th, 2024. This is a chart set for noon. Top right, there is Donald. I think that's just after there was that attempt on his life on July the 13th. A somewhat iconic picture in a way, although some people don't regard it as being iconic. And so as far as what's happening today, let me just make a quick change to that. Sorry, one moment. Let me make myself a little bit bigger. There we go. Okay, so the moon is still in Capricorn, 26 degrees 43 Capricorn. And so the usual things we have to say about Capricorn. About the moon in Capricorn. The moon is the only planet in an Earth sign, and it's on the way out. It's about to move into Aquarius. So it is a time when many of us, we continue to try to hold on to, to what's around us, to what we can touch, and we will continue to put a high premium on our security and on the security of the people around us, our loved ones, our family, our clan, if you like. There is something a little clannish about Moon in Capricorn. There are the people that are important to us, and there is everyone else. I mean, that can be a certain tendency with the Moon in Capricorn. And the Moon does make, or is making, a sextile to Neptune. Moon at 26, 27 Capricorn is at noon, New York, is making a sextile to Neptune. It's quite a gentle influence. Oh, it's not just making a sextile to Neptune, it is also making a trine to Uranus. So, Moon trine Uranus is perhaps not such a gentle influence, but then you have the sextile to Neptune. But I don't think we're necessarily going to feel it in a dramatic way, because Moon trine Uranus, Moon sextile Neptune, these are quite gentle aspects. Moon trine Uranus, perhaps it's about us trying to make an impression, trying to change things a little. I suppose you could say Moon in Capricorn trine Uranus might be, perhaps from a financial and security perspective, we might feel we need to do something. We might need to up the pace of something. We might need to make a few changes to make ourselves feel more secure. And then Moon sextile Neptune, it's sensitive, but I don't think it's sensitive in a dangerous way. I don't think it's oversensitive. Maybe we can just understand things, pick up on things, get a sense of what's happening around us in a quite emotional way. Now, the Moon does move into Aquarius. It moves into Aquarius at 2 minutes to 11 p.m. in London, in the UK. So, at the end of the evening, if you're in Europe, certainly Western Europe, the Moon will move into Aquarius, and there will be a change. And of course, if you're in the Americas, that movement is going to take place late afternoon, early evening. So we may not even feel that change, really, because yes, Aquarius and Capricorn, they're both ruled by Saturn. Though perhaps we might not be quite so concerned with sort of the physical world, because the moment the Moon moves into Aquarius, it moves out of an Earth sign, and so again we're left in a situation where there are no planets in Earth signs except for Uranus and Pluto, and that's what we're living in right now. I think it's November the 11th that Venus moves into Capricorn, so we're not there yet. So in less than a week, Venus will be moving into Capricorn, and so that's going to change things in some ways. I think for the better. I think that's going to be something that perhaps we need to look forward to, or we should be looking forward to. And of course, it's always so easy to miss Pluto, isn't it? Particularly on this chart, sort of Pluto's hiding behind a white line, a house cusp. And the Moon, yes, it makes a conjunction to Pluto. And I think that Moon-Pluto conjunction, represents a certain amount of intensity. Okay, passing intensity. That there may be times when we just can't fully express ourselves because perhaps it's all too much, and it's brief, but it happens just before the Moon moves into Aquarius. Now you could say that the Moon is making aspects to 3 outer planets: Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So Moon is making trine to Uranus, sextile to Neptune, and a conjunction to Pluto. Now, you could say that the conjunction to Pluto is more important because it's a conjunction. I mean, a conjunction, all things being equal, is the most powerful aspect. Of course, you could also say that Pluto is a very remote planet, the most transpersonal of all the transpersonals, so its influence could be quite subtle, but we may either feel that something is being held back, or we may feel that there's a burning need to express ourselves, to express our power. And one other aspect we've got is Venus is biquintile Mars. So Venus and Mars are 144 degrees apart. So 144 degrees, that is 2/5 of a circle. And Venus and Mars together, they represent attraction, what makes us appealing, what it is about us that people like. And I think that with a biquintile, it's about what we're trying to create. And so some of us may feel that we have to make a special effort to be attractive, to get people's attention. And there is something a little bit contrived about it, because it's a biquintile. You know, with the quintile, biquintile aspects, I always say that it is contrived. It is a sort of human-made aspect. It's not particularly natural. But, we make the conscious decision that we want to create an effect. And the effect we want to create with this Venus biquintile Mars is about being attractive, getting people's attention. You know, we feel we've got something to offer, and we know that with the right moves we can make ourselves charismatic and perhaps even desirable as well. So it's up to you, depends on your situation, what you're looking for, but maybe the Venus-Mars biquintile can be quite useful. Now that's the position in New York. Just quickly look at the positions of the planets set for Sydney, Australia at noon. And the moon at noon is really, it's still mid Capricorn. It's 18 Capricorn. So there's not a great deal of difference in the sense that whether you're in Sydney, Australia, or of course Auckland, New Zealand, or East Asia, Vladivostok, the moon is still in Capricorn, but there may be a slight difference of emphasis. For example, I talked a lot about the moon. I talked about the moon conjunct Pluto, but if you're in Australia or New Zealand, the moon conjunct Pluto is going to be more about tomorrow, and instead you may be more focused on moon square Chiron. Actually, moon square Chiron at noon in Sydney. So maybe moon square Chiron is something important. Moon square Chiron perhaps would be at one level you're trying to keep things in order, moon in Capricorn, but square Chiron, there's the temptation to do something differently. Or it may be that there is an issue of compassion. Moon in Capricorn, your first impulse is to feel compassionate about yourself and the people close to you, your family in particular. But Moon square Chiron is challenging you to extend that compassion to other people, to people you don't know, to the wider world. And you feel uncomfortable perhaps in the face of the suffering around you in society. I mean, that's one way of looking at it. Or it just may be Chiron the maverick. You want to be sensible, you want to do the right thing, but somehow you just want to do something different, and you're a bit conflicted in that department. So slight difference there. I think in America that moon square Chiron is not going to make itself felt, but I think perhaps Australia, New Zealand, East Asia, it could be a factor. Now it's time to look at the heliocentric chart. So there is a conjunction heliocentrically today between Mercury and Saturn. Sorry, Mercury and Pluto. So you can see here that Mercury, remember this is heliocentric chart, Mercury in Aquarius, very early Aquarius is conjunct Pluto. So that is heliocentrically, the main aspect, arguably the only main aspect. Maybe I've missed something, but Mercury conjunct Pluto is about our ideas, and it's about how we express our ideas. And some of us may feel we have to get people to listen. We've got something to say, we want to be heard, and we won't stop until we find the right audience. I mean, that's one way in which Mercury-Pluto conjunction can work. Alternatively, it can just be about the wider propaganda narrative. Especially as this is a heliocentric conjunction. Heliocentric charts tend to be sort of more collective, more outside the realm of the personal, more about society, the country we're living in. It's perhaps about the government, and the government trying to present a particular message. And I'm sure in the aftermath of Trump's victory, by the way, I should say that in some respects, it's good that Trump won so clearly. I think that is very fortunate, regardless of what you believe in. Trump winning just, not winning the popular vote. It looks as if he has won the popular vote, by the way. Trump, winning only just, or there've been talk about stolen ballots, all this kind of stuff. But the fact that it's a clear victory, I think it's going to make it much easier for Americans. But still, with this Mercury conjunct Pluto, there's still a narrative that perhaps the government is trying to say, that perhaps its proxies in the media are trying to give over with that Mercury conjunct Pluto, trying to persuade people that one thing is true when perhaps something else is true. So it could be a bit nasty, that Mercury-Pluto conjunction, but Mercury is a fast mover. Heliocentrically. Heliocentrically, Mercury can move up to 5 degrees a day, because remember, heliocentrically, Mercury only takes 88 degrees to go around the Sun. So that Mercury-Pluto conjunction, I think, is the main thing going on heliocentrically. Anyway, let's now do my forecasts for the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Thursday, November the 7th, 2024. One thing I should say before I continue is that yesterday and the day before, some of my forecasts were a bit brief. I think someone was complaining that my Leo reading was only 3 minutes. The reason my forecasts have been brief is because there hasn't been a lot going on. Yesterday there were just a couple of lunar aspects: Moon sextile Sun, Moon sextile Saturn. I didn't really think I had much to say. So there is more to say today. I don't think I'll be quite as brief as I was yesterday. Anyway, as I was saying, these are my forecasts for today, which is Thursday, November the 7th, 2024. Aries. Aries, you continue to be, I think, quite focused on yourself and what you need to achieve. You really do believe that there are things that need to be done, and I think that you want to go about things in a fairly no-nonsense, practical kind of way, not perhaps typical Aries behaviour. And indeed, you may feel that there is a little bit of pressure, that you want to get things done. You're perhaps concerned that if you leave things until tomorrow, things might not work out quite so well. So I suppose, Aries, it's a time to just decide what you want to do and just go ahead and do it in a sort of a practical, no-nonsense kind of way. Now, as far as the support you're getting is concerned, I don't think that you should feel that you necessarily have to do things on your own. And even if perhaps at the beginning of the day you might feel you are unsupported, that's certainly possible. But you have to consider your own free will, because actually, Aries, your ability to be persuasive is really very good. If you talk about something, you will immediately get people's attention. People will listen to you, not because you're being domineering or because you're demanding anyone's attention, but because what you say can actually be very interesting. And very often people who are Aries are interesting. It's not just because of the things they're talking about, it's because of the way they're talking about it. They're able to give it a certain spark, and it's a time to be talking about what you can do, and you don't have to be boastful. You just have to do it in a sort of a matter-of-fact kind of way. And at the same time, your ability to create at the moment is extremely good. And it's not just because Mars is in Leo. I mean, Mars, your ruler, is in Leo, a very creative sign for Mars to be in. It's not just because of that, but it's also because you're able to talk about it. You're able to discuss it. And that really means that you can decide what's important to you. You can be very matter-of-fact and down-to-earth about it. But while you're doing it, you can gain outside support and you can get people interested in what you're doing. And further, you benefit from a biquintile between Venus and Mars, which I was talking about in the introduction. Venus and Mars is a very attractive pairing. Venus biquintile Mars, Aries. There are things you can do to make yourself even more attractive, even more appealing than you already are. So if you have an idea about how to attract for whatever reason, then go for it, because I think you can make a powerful impression. Taurus, in your own way, Taurus, I think at the moment you are quite assertive. You seem to have very clear ideas about things. You know about the way things should be, and you have opinions. Taurians, of course, always have opinions. They might not always be open about their opinions, but they certainly have opinions. And I think at the moment you're going to be very clear about what you like, what you don't like, and at the same time, you seem to have a certain vision about the way things should be, the way you'd like things to be. And I think that you're going to be able to articulate this vision extremely well. And I think in most cases, people are going to listen to you. And, if you want to force the pace, I think you can. And one reason, Taurus, why you might be able to force the pace is that Venus is biquintile Mars. So we could say that Venus is your ruler, that Venus symbolizes you, and this 144-degree aspect with Mars. Mars is an assertive planet. And so with that biquintile, you can make an effort to be assertive. So, for example, if you start the day feeling in some way a little bit powerless, that you can't get things done, that you don't have the resources to get things done, if you start to feel that way, then you can make changes, because Venus biquintile Mars is an aspect about making the conscious effort to create change. So It's about you having an idea about what you would like, how you would like to assert yourself, how you would like to be taken seriously, how you would like to make things happen, perhaps how you would like to win battles. I mean, I don't mean literal battles, but how you would like to get the better of people. That might be how it works. And so you have this idea, and then you're able to put that idea into practice. So don't feel that there's nothing you can do. Don't feel powerless, because actually, if you make the effort, you can really make things happen. And I think that you're going to be able to push an agenda, or perhaps a set of ideas, and you may indeed have some quite strong and powerful ideas, with there being a conjunction between the moon and Pluto. Yeah, the moon is going to move into Aquarius at some stage. Well, if you're in the Americas, it moves into Aquarius late afternoon, early evening. Everywhere else, moon in Aquarius is more about tomorrow. But as the moon makes a conjunction to Pluto, and in fact it's making a trine to Uranus, that does, and a sextile to Neptune, but that does allow you to get your ideas into the open and get people to pay attention to your ideas, because there may be something about your beliefs that really are compelling. And so it's a time overall when you can be listened to, and don't doubt yourself. You've got a message. There are things you believe in, and now is the time to sort of put yourself at the center of things, and you can indeed make an impact today. Gemini, we looked at the heliocentric chart. So the heliocentric chart is a chart where you put the sun at the center of the solar system, and in the heliocentric chart there was a conjunction between Mercury and Pluto, and so that's Mercury conjunct Pluto. That says something about you, and what you want, and what you desire. So Mercury conjunct Pluto today, I think that at some level you are taking yourself seriously, and you should be taking yourself seriously. And the issue of power may actually be very important to you. And it may not just be power in terms of, I don't know, colleagues, family, friends. It may be about your power in society. How much power do you have in society? How much are you being listened to? And you may be perhaps more aware than usual about the impact that governments and the mainstream media, for example, have on you, how much impact they have on society. And it also makes you think about your power. And it's your mental power, the power to discuss what's important to you, the extent to which you have free speech. I mean, for the average Gemini, free speech should be very important. Or as they say, in America, it's in the United States, your First Amendment, that matters. That matters to you, or it should matter to you. Maybe me being Sun in Gemini, I'm just projecting. I mean, First Amendment, to my mind, is one of perhaps the best thing about the United States. I've got loads of criticism to make about the US, but it does have its First Amendment, and that's something for Americans to be proud of. And as a Gemini, being able to say what's on your mind is really important to you, First Amendment or no First Amendment. And it is, in fact, a time, Gemini, when you can be taken very seriously, and you can speak in a way which is very serious, which people will listen to you. They will listen to you. Though it may be, Gemini, that there are things you just don't want to say. But if something is important, I would urge you to be open about it. I don't think you're taking the risk that you think you might be taking. Of course, it depends where you are. It depends what society you live in. Some countries are freer than others. And it's not just about the Mercury conjunct Pluto in the heliocentric chart. It's also the fact we've got Moon conjunct Pluto in the geocentric chart. And that Moon conjunct Pluto could potentially encourage you to sort of keep things to yourself because it's just so heavy. It's something quite deep, something quite personal. You don't want to talk about it, but things are changing. The moon is in late Capricorn, and it is moving into Aquarius. If you're in the Americas, then late this afternoon, early this evening, then Gemini, there might be a change. I think in the Americas you could start to lighten up towards the end of the day. It's going to perhaps be easier for you to just be yourself. You perhaps won't be so concerned about what other people might say. And if you're not in the Americas, well, tomorrow moon moves into Aquarius, and I think you'll start to feel, I think, the benefits of the moon making this sign change. Cancer, moon continues its path through Capricorn. It's now in late Capricorn, and the moon does make a couple of aspects of note. It makes a trine to Uranus, sextile to Neptune, conjunction to Pluto, and those aspects are quite high level because they're transpersonal planets. These are planets at the sort of edge of the solar system, or at least at the edge of the solar system compared to the traditional discovered planets. I know that the solar system just actually goes on and on and on and on, and that it goes much further from Pluto. But with the moon making these aspects to Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, you may feel that you have access to things. Access to things perhaps on an intuitive and an emotional level. You sort of understand things that perhaps other people don't understand. And, already Cancer, it's a sensitive sign. And with the moon making these aspects, I think you're going to be more sensitive than usual. But, these are sextiles and trines. Not the conjunction to Pluto, but sextile Neptune, trine Uranus. These are fairly easy aspects, and so I think that you're just going to be able to pick up on things quite naturally. And if there's something you don't like that you want to change, I think that with that moon trine Uranus, I just think you're going to be able to do it in a relatively easy way. Now, you might think to begin with that it's going to be a problem, that there's going to be major resistance, but I don't think that this is the case. I think that very quickly you'll see what's happening, and you'll be able to act accordingly, and I think that you will be able to make you'll be able to make a fairly dramatic impact, but you yourself won't be especially dramatic about it. You'll be able to just do it in quite a smooth way. And then the moon does make a conjunction to Pluto. And so with that conjunction to Pluto, you might have insights perhaps about another person, and perhaps how much control they have on you. So you might be thinking that something is influencing you from outside, and that might bother you a bit. But maybe you're exaggerating to some extent. It may be just that you are picking up on something, and you're picking up on something about yourself, and okay, you could be projecting it onto other people, but I think that perhaps the challenge is, rather than to be concerned about who has the power outside, it's about taking the power for yourself, because I think overall you are quite strongly placed, even if it might not feel like it at the time. And the moon does move into Aquarius at some stage. It moves into Aquarius late afternoon, early evening, if you're in the Americas, and very late in the evening, moon moves into Aquarius if you're in Western Europe, and it'll move into Aquarius tomorrow, and that will bring a change. And I think with the moon in Aquarius, perhaps that's going to give you the opportunity to be sort of more emotionally detached, and perhaps some of the sort of complicated interpersonal issues that might have been lingering today, perhaps you can find a way of getting past them. But overall, Cancer, I don't think it's a particularly major day. I don't think there are huge things going on, but in terms of what's going on emotionally, the environment and so forth, I do think overall you are in control of things. Leo, well, I hope you're continuing to enjoy Mars moving through your sign. So Mars but it is moving slowly through your sign. Remember, next month it does go stationary. It does go stationary retrograde. So, as far as this is concerned, it is a time when Leos can really stabilize themselves, and I think perhaps that is important. Sometimes, with Leo, you can start to be perhaps a little too focused on yourself, and there might come a point where you're wondering, where actually do you fit in? I mean, it's nice to be the center of attention, but if you're the center of attention all the time, that can become exhausting. And I suppose there's a possibility of some kind of burnout or whatever. I mean, I'm certainly not talking about burnouts for you, but with the Sun being in mutual reception to Mars and the Sun being in Scorpio, it just does give you an opportunity to really ground yourself. And in terms of your home and family, with this mutual reception between the Sun and Mars, I think there's just so much useful work you can do. Your home can be improved upon. You can also get on with your family, and if you've had sort of recent disagreements with your family, then I think that they can be resolved. Okay, the Sun-Mars mutual reception could create the possibility of disagreements becoming more intense, but only if you're not asserting yourself. If you are asserting yourself and you're telling your family what you want, then I think that people are going to listen to you. Your family are going to listen to you. So I think, Leo, it is a time where you can sort of really take control of your domestic environment and where you live. And so as you're in a strong position, and you are going to be strongly placed with the Sun-Mars mutual reception until around November the 22nd, so for the next couple of weeks. So I do hope you're making the most of it. And looking at the specifics of what's happening today, we have a trine aspect between the Moon and Uranus. And this trine between the Moon and Uranus, I believe, is going to be quite useful. It's a bit of an optional aspect, though. I mean, you can probably ignore this aspect between Moon trine Uranus if you want to, but I think that actually would be a wasted opportunity. With this Moon trine Uranus, you're in a position where you can create changes that perhaps were somewhat unexpected, and you just go ahead and do it. And these changes in themselves are not dramatic. They're not revolutionary. You just decide that something needs to shift, something needs to move, something needs to be done differently. And at first, it doesn't seem to be important. But as you progress with making these changes, you'll find that one change leads to another change, leads to another change. And in fact, at a certain stage, you may have a sort of a mini revolution. I mean, when I say mini revolution, we're talking about a forecast for one day. So in one day in your own life, we can't have a complete revolution. That is unlikely. But we're talking about a mini revolution. Suddenly people realize that things have changed and that you are the author of those changes. And it's take it or leave it. You are actually in control through the work that you have done behind the scenes. And as far as people are concerned, the moon is about to move into Aquarius. The moon moves into Aquarius sort of late afternoon, early evening if you're in the Americas. So if you are in the Americas with the moon moving into Aquarius, I think that this might be a time when you are thinking about other people, and it may be a time also when you feel that a piece of work has been done and that there are a new set of challenges, and those new challenges might well be other people. And so try not to just spend the last part of the day alone if you're in the Americas. Try to interact, see what happens. You might find that things have changed, and perhaps there are things that you need to just let go of, and you talk to people about them. Get their feedback. Now, if you're not in the Americas, that moon moving from Capricorn into Aquarius is going to be something that happens tomorrow, or indeed perhaps very late this evening if you're in Western Europe. Indeed, most of Europe, I think. I think sort of Berlin time, moon moves into Aquarius at 2 minutes to midnight. And Berlin time, that's the same as, and a lot of Europe is on the same time as Berlin, isn't it? Slovakia, Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic. So even sort of Central and Eastern Europe is on Western European time. So if you're in most of Europe, then yes, the moon does eventually get into Aquarius, but there might only be 1 minute left of the day. Now, it's not just in the Americas that you should be thinking about other people, because if you want to, you can really be very, very sociable. It might require a little bit of effort, especially while the moon is in Capricorn. But if you are able to make the effort, you'll make a good impression, and perhaps you can create a connection where no connection existed. So in the past, there might have been no connection between you and another person, or perhaps there were limited connections. It was just based on a relationship that was based on just one thing. But actually today you can enhance this and you can strengthen your links with other people if you make the effort. I mean, if that's something you want to do. I mean, you may not want to do it, but I'm just saying that is an option that is available to you. Virgo. From a heliocentric viewpoint, Mercury makes a conjunction to Pluto. And I think it's possible that you're going to feel that heliocentric conjunction between Mercury and Pluto. So the Mercury-Pluto conjunction may encourage you to take yourself quite seriously and take your ideas quite seriously. There are things that you want to be heard. You've got something to say. I do feel confident that you do have something to say. Perhaps in the past you haven't been able to say it, or you felt confused, or you felt that the time wasn't right. But I think increasingly the time is right. And if you speak with power and conviction, I am very confident that people will listen to you. And Virgo, you have the capacity to change people's minds. How do you change people's minds? Well, it may just be about stating the facts as they are. Or you may just have an awareness of what is important to someone. You're aware of what matters. And because you know what matters, what's important to someone, you're able to maybe ever so slightly manipulative. And soon enough, they will understand what you're talking about, and perhaps they'll understand why they need to agree with you. Now, that Mercury conjunct Pluto can be a bit of a two-edged sword, because Mercury conjunct Pluto, remember, heliocentric conjunction between Mercury and Pluto, it's about the flow of influence. And you have the question, who is influencing who? And then you also have the question, who might be influencing you? So consider how you are making decisions and how you are planning things, and on what basis do you make your decisions. And you may perhaps be making your decisions on information given to you by another person, and look at how things might be, how you might be manipulated. And I'm speaking from the perspective of someone who observes city government in America in action and how committees work. I mean, not when I'm on any committees, but you observe committees. A lot of things are on Zoom. The way committees are constructed is that you often have people on the committee, because in America they like to have a fiction of democracy, that you have public participation. You'll have people on a committee, perhaps members of the public, and they're being chosen to decide something. But what matters is who is running the committee. And you sometimes even have outside consultancies running a committee. And they're the ones that provide the members of the committee with information. And so they can provide these learned, supposedly well-researched reports. They give the committee members these reports, and of course the committee members, they see the organizer's point of view. They start to parrot whatever the bureaucracy wants them to believe. So controlling the information is important. And I suppose when you look at information being given to you, don't take it at face value, even if that person is very, very qualified. Even if it's a subject that you know nothing about, you should never take any information at face value, particularly if it's been given to you by a government or a bureaucracy or perhaps a company, because you have to ask, why is it in another person's interests for you to make a particular decision? So I'm saying this because just to remind you that Mercury conjunct Pluto heliocentrically can be a two-edged sword. Yeah, it can be you as a persuader, but you also need to look at how you might be persuaded. So always ask questions. Aside from that, Moon is moving through late Capricorn, and it's, as you know, Capricorn is quite a creative sign. I mean, it's not in itself specially creative, but from a Virgo viewpoint, it's a creative sign. And the Moon is making a trine to Uranus. And okay, it's making a sextile to Neptune, a conjunction to Pluto, but I think it's that trine to Uranus that perhaps matters as far as you're concerned, because that Moon trine Uranus is in Earth signs, Moon in Capricorn, Uranus in Taurus, making a trine. That trine is in turn having an impact on Virgo, because Virgo is a sign that completes the grand trine. So from a creative and inspirational perspective, Virgo, it can be an inspiring day. And you start to see things in a new way, and you have ideas. These ideas, in themselves, they are inspired, but they're also quite down-to-earth. So you have these down-to-earth ideas about how you can change things in a very practical way, and it just hits you, and it's obvious. And then you realize that you make a change, a practical change, the kind of change that you weren't perhaps expecting to make yesterday, but you decide you're going to do it today, and you perhaps do it on the spur of a moment because it just feels so comfortable, and you do it, and I think very very soon you would see the benefits. So that's today, Virgo. Make sure that you're in control. That matters. And look at the flow of information, and just also, consider the possibility that you can make an important change, a change that just suddenly hits you. It comes from nowhere. Libra, don't hold back. You've definitely got something to contribute. You've got something that you feel you want to explain, and you want to bring it out into the open. And I think, in your own way, you can be very dynamic. There is, though, the question of whether you're going to want to be dynamic. I think that some Librans may just prefer to just take a step back. You feel perhaps you're not ready, that there are things you want to sort of attend to in your own way, in your own world, and perhaps you might convince yourself that no one's interested. Well, people are interested. People are interested in your view. And, you have clear views about the way things should be. And, many Librans, I think, are going to have perhaps political views. I mean, of course, it's a political time. And I suppose, certainly in the Americas, it may just be political overkill, that we've just had enough, or that people don't want anything to do with politics. But I think some Librans, have got something to say. And of course, Libra is actually a very political sign. A lot of Librans do well in politics. Whether it's democratic politics or sort of more dictatorial politics. You think of who's a Libran? You think of Javier Milei in Argentina. You think of Margaret Thatcher. You think of Silvio Berlusconi, the former Italian Prime Minister. You think, of course, of Vladimir Putin, David Cameron, former British Prime Minister. So Librans do have good political instincts. And at the moment, I think there is something a little bit political about you. I think you understand how things work, and I think you certainly have something to say. And at the same time, Libra, in spite of your reservations, I do think you do have reservations. I think that you kind of want to hold back, but I don't think you need to, because one reason I think you don't have to hold back is because I think you're more secure and grounded than you realise. I mean, you may think that if you say what's on your mind, if you take a step forward, that you might be attracting adverse publicity, that you might be attracting negativity. But no, I think it's just important that you don't doubt yourself, and also that you don't doubt your ability to have an impact, because we have a biquintile aspect between Venus and Mars, and this biquintile aspect between Venus and Mars is about you making the decision to make an impact. It's about you making a decision to get noticed. So if you're concerned but you're not getting noticed, or perhaps you feel you don't have enough power, well, think about it. Think about what actually you could do in a practical sense to get the attention you deserve. And you're a Libra, you understand how people work, you understand social dynamics, and I think it will be very soon clear to you what actually you have to do. And it's quite possible that you can almost appear from nowhere. One moment Libra isn't there, and the next moment Libra is there, and Libra is perhaps at the center of things. Now, the moon is moving through late Capricorn. It does move into Aquarius, and it moves into Aquarius London time at 2 minutes to 11 in the evening, so very late in the day. But if you're in the Americas, moon moves into Aquarius late afternoon, early evening. So for the last part of the day, the moon for you, if you are in the Americas, moon is in Aquarius. There's greater flow, and I think with the moon in Aquarius, you're going to feel sort of more confident, and I think you're going to feel better able to tell people what's on your mind. I mean, in the process, there might have to be a little bit of a disagreement. That is possible, because when the moon moves into Aquarius, it makes an opposition to Mars. Now, that moon opposition Mars, you don't have to worry about it if you're not in the Americas. If you are in the Americas, moon is opposition Mars, I suppose early evening. I mean, I haven't sort of looked it up, but late in the day, you perhaps feel that moon opposition Mars. And it may be that you have to be very clear about what you want in a creative sense. There are things you want to do, and perhaps other people have other ideas, but it's important that you hold firm. I think that does matter, or at least come up with a reasonable compromise. And of course, Librans are quite good at coming up with compromises. So in general, Libra, it's a day when it's just very important that you don't underestimate yourself. You are much stronger than you realize, and you can make things happen, and you can make things happen on your terms. Scorpio, you are able to put out your message. That shouldn't be a problem. I think people are going to take you seriously. And, whatever you're saying, Scorpio, it will make sense. People will listen to you, and you can have an impact. And you therefore mustn't be shy. Absolutely not a day for being shy. I mean, there could be a temptation if you're in the Americas by the end of the day, as the moon moves into Aquarius, to feel that that's it. You've done your bit, and you don't need to interact anymore. I mean, maybe that's the right thing, but only if you've achieved something. If you feel you're in the Americas and you haven't quite got your message across, well, you've got to keep trying, because you do have something important to say. And at the same time, Scorpio, I think that your artistic abilities, your ability to make things, to make special things, which just are a complete function of your uniqueness, that is absolutely something you can do. And it's just important that you're very open about it. People want to hear. Sometimes Scorpios can hold things back. They might persuade themselves that no one's interested, that it's just best to keep quiet. You might get a negative response. Don't do that. It's important that people can see it, people can feel it, and you really do have something that is very important to say, very important to communicate. Now, even if you are leading a solitary life today, you've made that decision, even if you're doing that, you still have the ability to communicate. Even if you don't have a phone, even if you're in a cave, cut off from society, you still have the ability to communicate, because you can communicate in so many different ways. And this is what I meant perhaps by your ability to create, to be artistic. You can put your energy into artistic creation, and you don't have to be a professional artist to do that. And because there are so many ways of being creative, and that is really something you can do. Though, as far as the social dimension is concerned, we just shouldn't forget that there is a biquintile between Venus and Mars. Venus and Mars are making a 144-degree aspect, so you benefit from that. So Venus, very often is the planet of relationships, especially in a Scorpio chart. And so Venus biquintile Mars may be about you having a connection with other people. There are people there, maybe someone in particular, and you feel perhaps that the connection isn't strong enough, that perhaps you and another person are not communicating as you should, and you feel this is sad, nothing much can be done about it, but there is always something that can be done about it. Through your conscious will, relationships can actually be made. So if you feel it's time to get close to someone, you can do it. If you feel it's time to get closer to someone, again, you can do it. So in terms of relationships, kind of imagine what you'd like things to be and then actually make it happen. And of course, no guarantees, but I think that this biquintile really does help you in terms of forging new links and intensifying links with other people. So ideally, you will not spend the day alone. I think that would probably be a shame. But if for one reason or another you are alone, well, that Venus biquintile Mars is still operational. I mean, Venus is not just about relationships. Venus is about aesthetics, it's about beauty, it can be about creativity, at least particularly in terms of creating something beautiful. And I think that Scorpio, you can create something beautiful. And you don't necessarily need any help. But if you can share that with other people, I think that would be great. But, if not, I think that you can really feel a great sense of personal satisfaction, that you're able to use your willpower to really make things happen and to make something that is a real sign of your fundamental creativity and your fundamental uniqueness. So Scorpio, in a way, it should be a busy day, and I think it's just important that you just make the effort and do not doubt yourself, because in fact maybe it can be a great day, but you're going to have to try. And a lot of that is to do with that Venus biquintile Mars. It's an aspect that's not automatic. You have to actually make it happen. Sagittarius, you feel that things are not entirely to your liking today. Not entirely. And I think in a way it's a continuation of yesterday. And there's still something just bothering you. And you perhaps also feel that it's just not quite the right time for, doing whatever you'd like to be doing. And therefore there may be a sense of pause, that you can do things, you can make things happen, but you just might feel that today's not the day. And perhaps part of the problem might be that the moon is in Capricorn, and with the moon moving into Capricorn, moving through Capricorn, and it's not doing anything great. Okay, it is making a trine to Uranus, but that's not affecting you directly. And I think that perhaps makes you or forces you to focus on stuff which is pretty down to earth, a little bit boring, and so it just doesn't feel that it is the right time. Plus, there is a certain sense of fear, a concern, perhaps a concern about the unknown. I mean, normally Sagittarians, like to embrace the unknown, but today, I don't think so. Not really. I think that you feel that if you were to stir things up, it wouldn't necessarily make anything better. So that might be your overall approach. Now, yesterday I did talk about money, and I think money might continue to be an issue for some Sagittarians. But the moon is making a trine to Uranus, as I've just said. So that moon trine Uranus, moon in Capricorn, trine Uranus in Taurus, may give you the opportunity to just think about something. You think about something, perhaps some way of making money, something comes up financially that you weren't expecting. And I think it probably will work in your favour. And so if it happens, if you do get an opportunity, do make sure that you try to take advantage of it. But there is some danger that you don't take advantage of it, because at some level you just seem concerned, and there's a certain tendency to sort of err on the side of pessimism. Now, I don't think that's such a problem if you're in the Americas, because what happens is that late afternoon, early evening, the moon moves out of Capricorn into Aquarius. And so Aquarius is a sign that has a fair amount of sympathy with Sagittarius. They're both positive signs. They're two signs apart. They don't have any conflict. And I think with the moon moving into Aquarius late afternoon, early evening, you're going to be feeling better. I think you're going to be feeling more constructive, and you're going to feel that there are more opportunities open to you, that finally you can start to do things, but you don't have to be so worried. Now, if you're not in the Americas, then the moon will move into Aquarius either very late this evening if you're in Western Europe, or tomorrow if you're elsewhere. So don't worry. I think that moon moving into Aquarius is going to help. But I think that just today, Sagittarius, it just may be that you're taking things in. You're trying to understand what is happening, and there are a lot of things happening in the world, and you're trying to sort of work it all out, and that might just take a bit of time. Now, I'm sorry to be a little bit negative, but as I say, tomorrow is another day. Capricorn, you are someone who has some very original ideas, and you might not feel that you have original ideas. I mean, if you look at sort of textbook Capricorn, originality is often not the word you see. I don't know why, but that's not a stereotype of Capricorn. But at the moment, I think Capricorn, you really are original, and you're seeing things in a way that other people are not. And it's just, you're noticing things, you kind of almost know what's going to happen next, and it's going to be very difficult to surprise you. A lot of people are surprised. Perhaps they live in fear of surprises, but not you, because you can see the surprise happening a mile off. Nothing will faze you. And because of your ability to withstand surprises, that does give you an advantage. While everyone else is trying to work out what to happen, you just know exactly what's going on, and you're able to act in a way that is cool and calm. And today you're further helped by the fact that the moon is moving through Capricorn. In fact, the moon is moving through Capricorn, and it is trine Uranus. And so moon trine Uranus is about you as someone who you maybe even be the source of a surprise. And if you can change things quickly and unexpectedly, it's quite possible that you can in some way seize an advantage. And it's not that you have to completely overthrow everything. I'm not saying you have to be a revolutionary, but you just make changes that are very fast, and people appreciate them very quickly. And at the same time, yesterday I was saying that Saturn was Saturn was on the Mercury-Jupiter midpoint, that there was this T-square with Mercury-Jupiter opposition with Saturn on the T. Okay, that T-square is not as strong today as it was yesterday, but I think it's still in operation, and this gives us the idea that you can present something, that you can bring things together that other people cannot bring together. They get confused because they don't see the full picture. But Capricorn, you do see the full picture. And because you're able to see the full picture, you're able to talk about it and you're able to explain it. And it may be that you can not just be a source of surprises, but you can be perhaps a source of reassurance, because you are at the center of things. You're at the center of the wheel, and you're not being thrown around by the storm. You get it all. And by putting things in perspective, Capricorn, I think that you actually have the capacity to reassure people. You can shock people, but you can reassure them. You can reassure them at the same time that whatever the shock is, whatever the surprise is, it's quite manageable. And so, Capricorn, there's no need to worry about things happening that you weren't expecting, because in a way, the unexpected perhaps is you, and you can deal with the unexpected. You are the unexpected, and you have originality and you have understanding. So Capricorn, it looks like being a day when you are in control. Aquarius, you do feel to an extent that you're waiting for something, that you're waiting for something to happen. In a way, it already has happened, but you're not quite ready, and you feel that you want to get your timing right. And there is a question: is it ever possible to get one's timing right? Well, I suppose astrology is all about timing and making sure that you don't act too early. And I think today there is a possibility that you could be tempted to act too early. It's like there's something that you'd like to do, that you'd like to start, but you do need to get the timing right, because at the moment a lot of things are still up in the air. They're slowly coming down to earth, but they haven't reached the earth yet. So there is a little bit of a sense of confusion, and perhaps if you were to act early and try to get things done early, you wouldn't really make much progress, because it's certainly if you have to deal with other people, because other people may not be ready. But at some stage, they will be ready. And if you're in the Americas, for example, late afternoon, early evening, you've got the moon moving into Aquarius. And I think moon moving into Aquarius for you is probably a good thing. I mean, the moon is in your sign, so it's got to be a good thing in terms of you being comfortable, you feeling that you're in the right place. But when the moon moves into Aquarius, it straight away starts to make an opposition to Mars. So Moon-Mars opposition, again, I think if you're in the Americas, I don't think it's such an issue if you're anywhere else, but that Moon-Mars opposition might cause a certain amount of animosity. So in the Americas, late in the day, consider who you're with, what people are around you. If you're with people that you've had arguments with in the past, if you're with people who are difficult, then you're going to have to potentially deal with a situation, because agreement might not be easy to find. On the other hand, if you're with people that you're comfortable with, that you understand, and you have the same priorities, and there haven't been any recent disagreements, then things should be fine. In fact, things could be very constructive. Now, for most Aquarians, particularly if you're not living in the Americas, there is still something that you feel that needs to be kept hidden, and it is something that is important to you. It's something that is fundamental to you, and it may also there may be a sense of surprise about it, because we've got a moon trine Uranus, moon in Capricorn trine Uranus in Taurus, and it may be that you feel that there's something happening sort of deep down under the surface, like in sort of geologically, it's like sort of tectonic plates. Something is shifting a little bit, Aquarius, and it's not something you can immediately discuss, but you know it's important, and you know that something has changed, and it may be a change in terms of your home, where you live, or perhaps your family. You feel that something has changed, and you're still trying to work it out. But I think that when the moon moves into Aquarius, perhaps into tomorrow, you may find that it's easier to verbalize it, and it is easier to get things in perspective. Pisces, there's still something making you nervous. You'd like to let go, but it's difficult because you are not entirely sure where it would lead. I mean, at the same time, you would like to let go, and you'd like to become part of something wider than yourself, but you're afraid, you're concerned, and I think that if you're not fully confident about something, then I think that you should be careful. I mean, I don't actually think anything bad is going to happen, but I think you do have to respect the way you feel. And in terms of other people, I suppose one way of letting yourself go is to sort of be part of the group, part of the crowd, part of the collective. I mean, I suppose you can be part of a one-to-one relationship. I suppose that as a way of letting go. But I don't think that you're going to... I don't think you're going to want to let go. And I think that your integrity as an individual is going to be important. And this takes us back. It always takes us back to the fact that Saturn is moving through Pisces. I mean, I know I talk about this a lot, and I will be talking about it a lot. I mean, Mercury, Saturn's been in Pisces for a long time, for best part of a year, and it's just a reminder, Pisces, that you can't just be all things to all people. Saturn is telling you that you do need to have a sense of who you are, and also who you are not. That's just as important, and boundaries are going to matter. And so when you're with other people, boundaries do matter. And perhaps you're going to realize that you need to sort of really hold your ground. We've got the moon is making a conjunction to Pluto today, and with moon conjunct Pluto, there is a feeling that you need to be careful. You need to hold back. And you might also think that, over the next couple of days, perhaps you want to just be off the radar. That's the best place to be, because, there are still things that need to be resolved. And I think that's absolutely fine. But, fundamentally, Pisces, deep down, this is a time when you are gaining strength, but it's gaining strength perhaps over a period of time. Certainly between now and the beginning of next year, you are getting stronger. You're getting a sense of familiarity with things. Things have changed. There has been some uncertainty, and you just need to give yourself time to get familiar. And I think that perhaps is what is happening. And that's connected with the fact that Mercury is in Sagittarius, Jupiter's in Gemini, And yeah, they are in mutual reception to each other. They are in each other's signs, but it's good, but it's something you still need to get used to. And I'm thinking, by the beginning of next year, you're going to have a much clearer sense of direction, and you're still going back over old ground. You're wondering whether something is worth it, whether something should be pursued, whether or not you're overextending yourself. These are all things you need to consider. And today is perhaps a day when this is what you should be doing, and you should be thinking about your boundaries. How far can you go? And I think what you sort of don't want to do is sort of dissolve into something, because it sounds nice spiritually, dissolving into something broader from yourself, but if you look at it psychologically, that is dangerous. You do not want to dissolve. People talk about the ego as being a bad thing. The ego is absolutely essential. The ego holds everything together. Unless you're the Buddha, you need an ego. And so don't be afraid of your ego, and don't be afraid of being a little bit selfish. And that's it. Those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And now I'm going to look at today from the perspective of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Thursday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 28, which is the preponderance of the great. And this is quite a difficult hexagram. You can actually see this by looking at the hexagram. So we've got 4 unbroken lines in the middle. We've got a broken line at the top, a broken line at the bottom. And so that perhaps gives us the image of a huge weight, those 4 unbroken lines. And at either side we've got the handles. And those handles are not very strong. So it's this huge weight we're trying to lift up. And the question is, do we have the capacity to pick up this weight and bear it? And the I Ching at one sense says, yeah, we can do it. It is tough picking up this big burden. Maybe we're burdened by the fact that other people have not been pulling their weight, and they've been focusing on something else, and they've just left us to it, and we're not particularly happy about it. So we have this big burden, and in one sense, yeah, we can make it, can we? But we do have to be very careful, because there is a moving line, and the third line from the bottom moves. And third line from the bottom, third lines are often difficult, and this is giving us a warning. There is a danger that we think we can do it. We plow ahead without thinking, and we could get ourselves into trouble. We could get ourselves into big trouble. Now, we could take this hexagram absolutely literally. So, if today you are in a situation where you are lifting something, it might be something that seems minor, a table or something. It's something you can do, or maybe more major, something that needs to be moved that is heavy. I wouldn't do it unless you absolutely know what you're doing, because I think there is an increased risk of, doing yourself in by taking on something too much, and lifting a heavy object would be a way to do it. So on a very practical level, lifting heavy objects should be absolutely avoided today. It's not a good idea. And sort of, with this third line moving, we're tempted. We think, oh, well, we can just move this thing and it'll be fine. But it's not going to be fine. I don't think it will be, or it might not be fine. So be careful, get help, don't be in a rush. So this can apply to many other things. It's a big burden we've got. We're in a rush to do it. We go too far, and there is a danger of disaster. And so what I would say with this hexagram is, if in doubt, don't do it. If it wasn't for that third line, I'd perhaps say, yeah, it's going to be difficult, but you can see it through. But you might try to see it through. You might think, you might be careful, you might pick up the burden, but you just get carried away. You try to advance too quickly and you do yourself an injury, literally or metaphorically. So whatever that big task is, then I would be very wary of it. If in doubt, don't do it, because it could end badly. Now, third line moving, this moves to, so that means we're moving to a second hexagram, and the hexagram it moves to is hexagram 47, which is oppression, which is not a good outcome. So, we get the idea of, we attempt a task, we perhaps don't fully see the task through, the task may damage us, and we end up in a worse situation. We feel we can't do anything, we don't get the support we need, and so why did we bother in the first place? So I'm sorry to be so negative, but I have to say that today it's probably not a good day for volunteering. It's not a good day for taking on new tasks. Even if you're able to complete the task, well, you might do yourself an injury, and I don't think you're even going to get thanked. So perhaps you should take it slowly and maybe just do nothing. And certainly don't do anything dangerous, and don't do anything exhausting. And now I want to look at Donald Trump's chart and just the whole environment of this election. Now, in this part of the video, I'm going to be quite general. I'm certainly going to go over material I've already gone over. I do want to put out a separate video looking at Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and why Donald Trump won, why Kamala Harris lost, and there are some points I want to make on sort of perhaps on a technical basis, but I don't want to do this in this video, and the rest of this video may actually be a little bit chaotic. I may go from sort of place to place. At the same time, I haven't got all the time in the world, so let's see what happens. Let's see what we can do. So the obvious point is that Donald Trump has won the election, and here's his horoscope. Now, in terms of me predicting that Donald Trump was going to win, I actually, in the end, put much of my focus on Kamala Harris's chart, because I think that much of Kamala Harris's chart, much of Donald Trump's victory is to do with Kamala Harris rather than he himself. And I think, astrology aside, there's a general consensus that she was an absolutely terrible candidate. I would think you could speculate that in terms of presidential history, in the history of the Republic, she's one of the worst presidential candidates that's ever been chosen. I don't know, in the depths of the 19th century, there may have been a candidate who was worse than her. I don't know. I'm not a super expert on American history. So as far as Trump's chart, I suppose if you had been studying astrology for, say, a couple of weeks, you might have said that Trump was going to win, and you might have done it in a sort of very simple way by saying, well, let's just compare Trump's chart with the presidential election. So if you'd come into it with absolutely zero bias, you might have said, well, Jupiter was conjunct his sun. Not exactly, but Jupiter was conjunct his north node, and Jupiter was conjunct his sun. Maybe it was just as simple as that. I didn't myself put a great deal of store on that, but North Node, Trump does have North Node in the 10th house. North Node is one's destiny. It's a way one should be going. Whatever you think about Trump, with a North Node in the 10th, he was put on this planet to get attention, to get noticed, to perhaps to get involved in politics. That was what he was put on the planet for. Doesn't matter what you think of him. That's what he was there for. Jupiter conjunct his North Node. I mean, maybe you could just stop the analysis there. Now, you could say, oh, well, Kamala Harris had Jupiter on her ascendant, but her ascendant, I think, is 24 Gemini. Jupiter's not. It wasn't exactly on her ascendant. I want to go into the details of that transit in this other video that I'm hoping to make today. But it could have been that simple as that. And Uranus on the midheaven. He's had Uranus on his midheaven all year. He had Uranus on his midheaven when he was shot. When he was shot on July the 13th. And astrology aside, I think many people saw that event, which happened when Jupiter was, how did it work? There was a Mars-Uranus conjunction. Mars-Uranus conjunction at 25 Taurus. And so that was when he was shot on Algol. And he was shot in the ear. And I think many people looked at that and said, this guy's going to win. I mean, astrology aside, you don't survive that kind of event. I mean, it was an iconic event. I mean, I know that the liberal media tried to discount it, but honestly, it was an incredible event, which is a sign of victory. It's almost an omen of victory, you could say. And so, yeah, he had Uranus on his midheaven. Okay, he didn't have Mars on his midheaven as well, but Uranus on the midheaven is about something spectacular happening to him in terms of his career, in terms of his progress. And of course, I do understand that not everyone uses this time of birth for Trump. There is an alternative time that's being used, but I understand. But this is the most commonly used time for Trump. Uranus is on his midheaven, Jupiter is on his sun, and that's all you need to say. And that might be it. And I'm going to look in more detail at other things going on in his chart, but in a separate video. So then there's a question of, what was actually going on at the time of the election. And if you look at the election, I mean, this is a chart for 11 p.m. 11 p.m. on the evening of the election. I chose that time because I thought, well, that would be a time when the results are coming in. Some polls are closed. So when polls are closing, even on the West Coast. And so what's interesting about this chart, there's also another omen of victory here. And I thought it was interesting that Mars has just gone into Leo, and Mars has making a mutual reception of the Sun. So you had Sun in Scorpio, a planet ruled by Mars, and you had the Sun, Mars in Leo, a sign ruled by the Sun. They're in mutual reception. So that means that Sun and Mars are both very strong. And Sun and Mars are both male planets. And so it gives the advantage to the male candidate. And so when we have Trump as a male candidate, it just gives him a natural advantage. I actually regarded that Sun-Mars mutual reception in a way as an omen of Trump's victory. And the gender side of things is additionally shown by Trump's chart itself, and this is kind of sort of unpleasant, and perhaps not unpleasant, but it's a bit unfair to point this out in a way. But the fact is that Trump has a conjunction between Venus and Saturn, and we know about Trump and women. Are women going to vote for him? Trump has treated women really badly. I think that is fair to say. Even with this Stormy Daniels thing, and just after Melania had given birth, he was cavorting with Stormy Daniels. Plus his statements about women and so forth. That is very much Venus conjunct Saturn, and if we want to go into sort of detail about that, we can look at some hypothetical planets, and so let's just show the full. Let's show all his the Uranian planets, and there is Hades. Hades is the planet of a sort of sleaze, and actually a planet of garbage and unpleasantness. And he has Venus exactly square his Hades. His comments, his gross comments that he's made in the past, that he's on record for making, it all fits with that Venus square Hades. And the fact he's got Venus conjunct Saturn square Hades. There is evidence there that he's capable of not treating women very well. But we can look at that Venus conjunct Saturn perhaps as an advantage. Venus conjunct Saturn is someone who is not very good for women. And the reality is that this is his third election. And he won two, lost. Sorry, he won two, lost one. He lost the election against Biden. He lost an election against a male candidate. He has beaten two female presidential candidates. These two candidates that were supposed to be the breakthrough candidates. Finally, you got to get a woman in the White House. It was going to be Hillary. It was going to be Kamala. But he has Venus conjunct Saturn. This was unpleasant, but it's true. Venus conjunct Saturn is someone who is not good for women, and who is perhaps in the past he's been unpleasant to women, hasn't treated them very well. But two women who is certainly not treated well through the election, as of course Hillary and now Kamala. So Kamala, I want to talk about Kamala in detail in a different video, and I've talked about her for sort of forever and ever. I don't think I've ever looked at a chart in so much detail as Kamala Harris's chart, but in this video, I don't really want to look too much at Kamala Harris's chart. But one thing about Kamala Harris that is important, I think, as far as her and Trump, is that Kamala Harris has her Jupiter at around 24 Taurus. So if you compare Trump's chart with Kamala Harris's chart, so let's put Trump's chart in. Let's put Donald Trump in the middle, and we'll put Kamala Harris on the outer wheel. You'll notice that Kamala Harris's Jupiter is exactly on Trump's midheaven. Now, I pointed this out before. I don't know if everyone agreed with me, but as far as I can see, Kamala Harris was good for Donald. It was through Kamala Harris that he got elected. If the Democrats had chosen anyone else, I think particularly a male candidate, given the fact that Trump has got the Venus-Saturn conjunction in his chart, Trump would have lost. But that's her Jupiter. And so you could say that Kamala Harris's role, in the end, her historic role, was not to be elected as president of the United States, but her historic role was to ensure that Trump gets a second term. And so in a way, her final action to sort of consummate that role is to sign off on the election results, isn't it? Is that how it works, Vice President? That's going to be bad for her, isn't it? Signing off on the election results. I'll try and look at the chart of, I think that's January the 6th, isn't it? So I think he was benefited. He certainly benefited by. He benefited through Kamala Harris, and as far as the timing is concerned, Donald Trump has made history because he is only the second president to get a non-consecutive term, and the first president to do that was Grover Cleveland, and so here's a horoscope of Grover Cleveland. I'm not saying there's any link between Grover Cleveland and Donald Trump, but what I wanted to look at was Grover Cleveland's first election, when he was first elected as president. So Grover Cleveland was first elected as president after the elections on November the 4th, 1984. Sorry, November the 4th, 1884. And so Grover Cleveland, at the time of the election, I'm looking particularly at Venus. Venus was at 1 degree Libra. Now, Venus has this interesting feature in that it repeats itself every 8 years. So if you take an ephemeris and you look at the position of Venus and you note that position down, and you look at an ephemeris 8 years later, it will be roughly in the same position. And of course, American elections always happen at the same time. It's not like British elections that can happen all sorts of times, any time of year. American elections always happen at the beginning of November. And so with Grover Cleveland, he won the 1884 election. He lost the 1888 election, but then he won the 1892 election. So there's Venus at 1 degree Libra, and then you have got you look at the 1892 election, and Venus is at 6 degrees Libra. So Venus repeats. And we can see the same thing with Donald Trump. He won the 2016 election. Venus was at 25 Sagittarius, and unusually for an American presidential candidate, he was able to have another go 8 years later. America doesn't like losers. In spite of losing in 2020, he was able to have another go, and so as we can see at the presidential election in 2024, there is Venus at 23 Sagittarius. So it was in the same position, and so that 8-year cycle of Venus, I think it helped Grover Cleveland, and I think it also, to an extent, it helped Trump, and so that I think seemed to work in his favour. Now, the Jupiter-Saturn cycle is something that I put a lot of focus on when looking at this presidential election. And really, the Jupiter-Saturn cycle, in a way, should have worked against Trump, because Jupiter-Saturn, you always get a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, but close to presidential elections ending in 0. So, we go back, I've done this before, I'm not going to go back in detail like I have in past videos, but, we had, there's the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction of 2020, and at the same time as the 2020 presidential election, then you have a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction around the 2000 election, the 1980 election, the 1960, 1940, 1920, you go back, and generally always the incumbent wins in the next election. So if you get elected in a year ending in 0, you always get re-elected in the year ending in 4. And if you die in that first term, your running mate is able to take over. So, for example, 1920, Warren Harding was elected, and he died in that first term. Calvin Coolidge took over from him, and Calvin Coolidge stood in 1924, and he won. Likewise with Kennedy, JFK got elected in 1960. He died. He was assassinated in 1963. LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson took over. Lyndon B. Johnson took over in 1964. So, with Biden getting elected in 2020, 2024 should have been easy. I mean, he could have restood, perhaps. Maybe he would have won if he'd restood, but maybe fate had other ideas. Or he could have died, and maybe Kamala Harris, as the incumbent, having had a bit of experience of being president, would have been able to win. But it didn't work like that. And you had a similar situation from what you had in 1880. So in 1880, you had James Garfield was elected, and James Garfield was elected. He died in his term, and his vice president, Chester Arthur, took over. Now, if Chester Arthur had have stood again in 1884, I think he would have been standing against Grover Cleveland in 1884. I think Chester Arthur would probably have won, but Chester Arthur wasn't the nominee. Like Biden was not the nominee. It was someone else, and that someone else lost. So, in a way, the order of things had been disrupted. And so what actually happened? And I kind of think with this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in 2020, and let's go back to here, what happened after that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in 2020? Well, we had the Capitol Hill thing. And a lot of people thought that the Capitol Hill was a complete disaster for Donald. But maybe, again, this is an unfair thing to say, you could argue that Trump, through his behavior on January the 6th, he guaranteed his re-election because he kept himself relevant. And if you looked at what Kamala was talking about Trump, couldn't stop talking about Trump. And so the election became about Trump. And it almost became as if Trump was the incumbent. I mean, I know obviously Trump wasn't the incumbent, but he was being treated like the incumbent. And, the incumbent from 2016, when he became elected in 2017, and then, they kept making him relevant through their lawfare, trying to attack him through the courts. And so his Capitol Hill, he kind of made himself relevant. He put himself in the news. He constantly made himself in the news. And he became the evil incumbent. I mean, not the incumbent. Obviously, technically, Biden was president, but Biden was a very lame duck president. So he became the incumbent. And so in terms of that, sort of at a spiritual and psychological sense, obviously not at a real sense. And of course, he kind of won in his own bizarre way through the Capitol Hill thing. He won the publicity battle, became the psychological incumbent. And perhaps you could then argue that the person who becomes president or has this weird psychological incumbency wins again in the following election. This may be psychologically part of a reason why Trump actually won this time. That's another reason. But as I said at the beginning of this piece, it's all a bit confused, all a bit vague. I've been a bit disorganized in my description of Trump's victory, and I'm going to try to put out a video today where I'm more systematic about it, where I really particularly want to look at Kamala's chart and look at some of the reasons why Trump won, why Kamala lost, and I think also in particular why so many astrologers got it wrong. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So thanks again for watching, and I will talk to you again very soon.